Jack Cunningham, Crossing Brooch, 2000. Jack Cunningham, white metal, silver, not hallmarked, carved moonstone, amethyst, wood, anodized aluminium, on reverse. Fabricated from sheet and wire, roll-printed sheet, formed into tubing, cast sycamore seeds. Approximately 80 mm by 40 mm. Description: brooch comprising a crescent segment of a wooden ruler, a silver rod, an amethyst crucifix with sycamore seed wings, and a moonstone disc with a face carved into it. Genre: contemporary European narrative jewelry. Jack Cunningham, biography. Jack Cunningham is a university lecturer, exhibition curator and contemporary jeweler. His particular interest is in visual narrative jewelry, jewelry that has a meaningful story or symbolism behind it. He studied at Duncan of Jordanstone College of Art in Dundee in the mid-1970s and completed a PhD at Glasgow School of Art in 2007, where he taught until 2008. Cunningham uses his jewelry to tell stories. These stories are about his own relationships, experiences and childhood memories. He has said that his jewelry talks about his life and the people he knows. He almost always makes brooches. He believes that the simple pin attachment for a brooch makes it an ideal object for a narrative design because there are no additional chains or wires to distract from the narrative. He thinks of his brooches as individual works of art with the wearer's body as the exhibition space. Many jewelers concentrate on molding their jewelry sensually around the human form, but for Cunningham the body is simply the best place to display his art. These are wearable artworks that have a physical connection to the viewer. His work has been exhibited nationally and internationally, has received numerous awards and is represented in many public collections. Cunningham's interest in narrative jewelry began whilst teaching in Denver, Colorado in the early 1990s. Though he became familiar with milagro charms associated with South American culture and the Day of the Dead celebrations. Milagro are tiny, inexpensive folk charms that are traditionally used for healing purposes or as religious offerings. They depict familiar objects like people, animals, body parts or hearts. Cunningham started to collect small, everyday objects to incorporate into his jewelry. His focus was now exclusively on narrative jewelry, and each piece was given a title to reflect the meaning behind the story. Cunningham explores themes which reflect emotional and physical experiences. He comments on personal relationships, memories and places. He has become more interested in what other people read into his work. When he makes a piece, it is related to events and experiences in his own life, but he has found that the people who buy his brooches will read the narrative in their own way. The brooches will have a different meaning for them based on their own experiences of the imagery or objects in the brooch. He doesn't often give explanations of the narrative behind each piece of jewelry, preferring the viewer or wearer to make their own meaning. The work and its meaning no longer belong to him. Cunningham is interested in the triangular relationship between the maker, the wearer and the viewer. The maker creates the original meaning by choosing specific objects and materials for the brooch. The wearer interprets those objects and materials and creates their own meaning and chooses to wear the piece. The viewer would see the object pinned to the wearer and make their own judgment about the brooch and the wearer's relationship with it. Crossing Brooch, 2000. The crossing brooch includes a crescent segment of a wooden ruler, a silver rod, an amethyst crucifix with cast sycamore seed wings, and a moonstone disc with a face carved into it. The crossing brooch has personal emotional meaning for Cunningham. It refers to the death of his sister. Although he has no particular religious faith himself, he is sensitive to her beliefs and includes religious symbols in this brooch, the amethyst and silver cross and the sycamore seeds representing a journey to the hereafter. The form of the brooch suggests a boat shape similar to the type depicted in classical and Egyptian images associated with funerals. It also has a face carved into the moonstone looking forward in the direction of travel. The semi-precious gem moonstone has symbolic meaning related to dreams and protection for travelers. The segment of ruler suggests the hull of the boat and indicates the measure of a lifespan. In this case, the years of his sister's life. Crossing reflects a tradition of jewelry created to be worn as a sign of remembrance. Although the brooch is a commemoration of the death of family, the imagery suggests hope and moving forward. For example, the boat, the sycamore wings and the face lighting the way forward, all suggest a sense of movement and a journey into the future. The impact of social, cultural or other influences. Cunningham's interest in narrative jewelry began whilst teaching in Denver, Colorado in the early 1990s. The narrative pieces of jewelry that Cunningham creates were initially influenced by the South American milagro charms that are associated with the culture of the Day of the Dead. Milagro are tiny, inexpensive folk charms that are traditionally used for healing purposes or as religious offerings. They depict familiar objects like people, animals, body parts or hearts. This influence resulted in Cunningham moving away from abstract forms of jewelry making and turning to narrative jewelry. He started to collect many small found objects with which to construct his work. He also collects sayings and phrases with which to construct his narratives. Cunningham's source of inspiration often comes from within. His narrative jewelry draws on his personal experiences of life. The crossing brooch was influenced by the death of his sister. Although not religious himself, he was influenced by her beliefs when choosing the symbolism and objects for this design. Function. A function of Jack Cunningham's crossing brooch is to be pinned securely to clothing and worn as an everyday decorative and thought-provoking object. It also has a narrative function, that is to convey meaning to the wearer and viewer. Although the brooch has specific meaning for Cunningham, that is the death of his sister and mother, its function is also to allow the viewer to interpret their own meaning from the brooch. Fitness for purpose. The size and shape of Cunningham's crossing brooch make it fit for purpose. It is a delicate object with a discreet pin attachment that secures it to the wearer's clothing. However, the long silver tube with the carved moonstone face and the delicate cast sycamore leaves could become caught in hair or clothing, making it vulnerable to bending or breaking. The symbolic objects used in crossing are recognizable symbols of Christianity, travel and measurement. They suggest well-known traditions about traveling by boat to the afterlife, for example, crossing the river Styx. It therefore meets the function as a narrative piece of jewelry. Materials, techniques. Crossing makes use of found objects. Found objects in art describes art that has been constructed of ready-made objects that the artist has found and collected. It is usually still clear what the object is, but it might have been modified to suit the purpose of the artist or designer. When a title is given to an artwork that is made out of found objects, it gives those objects new meaning. The original function of the object changes and it becomes a piece of art. The found objects that Cunningham has included in the design of the crossing brooch are sycamore seeds and a segment of ruler. The function of the sycamore seeds has changed from the propagation of a tree to a symbol of journeying. The ruler has changed from a practical tool for measuring distance to become a symbolic measure of time. Cunningham has combined the found objects with traditional jewelry-making materials by including silver and semi-precious gems in carved moonstone and amethyst. Target market, audience. Cunningham's work is handmade artist jewelry of very fine quality. Each piece is unique. Cunningham is not interested in mass production. Each piece creates an individual narrative using objects that have been collected over time, making each piece personal to its buyer. The target market for such jewelry is likely be those with considerable wealth and an interest in arts and culture. Although the pieces are not made with very valuable materials, the bespoke nature of each item suggests that they will be high-end prices. This item of jewelry is unlikely to appeal to, or be afforded by, a younger market. It is more likely to appeal to professional men and women age 30+. It will appeal to people that would enjoy finding meaning within the detail of the piece and solving intellectual puzzles. It is designed to be intriguing, elegant and wearable for smart and more casual occasions. Visual impact. The crossing brooch is elegant and intriguing. Its impact is subtle, inviting the viewer to look closely at the detailed imagery and the objects within the design. The familiar objects draw the viewer into the piece and draw the viewer's eye around the brooch. Style, aesthetics. Crossing is a narrative style of jewelry. This means it is a wearable jewelry object that contains a story or message that the maker is trying to get across to the viewer. Crossing is a contemporary piece of jewelry that reflects everyday life within the found objects of the design: the ruler, the cross, the sycamore seeds. Aesthetically, it has an elegant horizontal shape that seems calming. The soft purple of the amethyst cross and pale ochre of the ruler complement each other and reflect off the silver metal, providing a lovely unity across the piece. The cross, sycamore seeds and ruler are perfectly counterbalanced by the moonstone at the end of the silver rod. The metalwork is smooth and has a rounded, handcrafted finish which adds to the quality of the piece. Influences, sources of inspiration. See above in the impact of social, cultural or other influences. Imagery. The imagery of crossing is highly symbolic and designed to tell a story. The theme is death and a journey to some sort of hereafter. The shape of the ruler is like the hull of an ancient Egyptian funeral boat. The ruler still has its units of measurement indicating the lifespan of the passenger. The amethyst cross surrounded by silver has cast silver sycamore seeds at each side. This could represent the passenger of the boat traveling to the next life. The moonstone with the carved face looks forward to guide or light the passage of the boat. Decoration. See imagery and pattern. Color. The soft purple of the amethyst cross and pale ochre of the ruler complement each other and reflect off the silver metal, providing a lovely unity across the piece. The color overall is subtle and neutral, reflecting the somber but hopeful narrative of the piece. Pattern. The repeating units and sequence of numbers on the ruler and the symmetry of sycamore seeds provide some geometric pattern and rhythm to the brooch. Shape. The overall shape suggests an Egyptian funeral boat. The rounded ruler hull is reflected in the arc of the sycamore seeds. This forms a rounded directional line that pulls the viewer's eye around the brooch. The moonstone is similar in size to the amethyst cross, but they are contrasting in shape, the moonstone being rounded and the cross being angular. This has the effect of drawing the viewer's eye between these two objects along the shaft of the silver rod. The prominent and familiar shape of the cross symbolizes a belief in Christianity and forms the core of the narrative. Form. The form of the brooch suggests a boat shape similar to the type depicted in classical and Egyptian images associated with death and travel to the afterlife. The form of the brooch is fundamentally two-dimensional and intended to be viewed from the front. The flat form makes it fit for pinning to the front of a garment.